Hello Summoners, and welcome back to another episode of ProGuides Underrated Picks, now on patch 10.8. My name is Nathan Ng, and my sleep schedule is so freaking scuffed. Like, I am sleeping at 8 a.m. now and waking up at 3. This is horrible, and it's not because of League. Like I said, it's not because of League. It's because I'm trying to get that Valorant code. Okay. Anyway, some champions have fun at excelling in the meta with none of the spotlight that comes with it. So we're going to be talking about the picks that fly below the radar of the general community that are often the most valuable. Really quick though, before we get right into it, today's question of the day is, which skin do you think is the most underrated? Leave your answers in the comment section down below, and without further delay, let's get it started. Maokai is our first underrated pick in the top lane, and after pushing for him for a few patches now, we're finally starting to see people catch on. I'm not so sure why it took so long for people to give him a shot. Maybe it's just because he's really boring to play, but his kit is crazy loaded between the knockback on his Q, the root on his W, and a lane-wide engage he has on his ultimate. Never mind the fact that his E saplings offer free zone control, and he has a passive that keeps him topped off with health. His tank stats are freaking insane, and with all the lockdown at his disposal, it's even harder to have control of your champion long enough to try to damage him. Maokai is still sleeper for now, but it won't last, so hop on board before everyone really starts to figure it out. Shyvana is our second underrated top laner, and unlike her jungle build, she's back to building like a bruiser to abuse Conqueror's healing. Between the new death stance being more bruiser friendly, Conqueror, and Spirit Visage, she's just too damn hard to kill. Her ability to trade with her W's dot and movement speed boost is hard to match, especially if she's properly using her Q to auto cancel to get the most out of her trades. Her E's Fire Breath is still a little less potent with this build, but that's okay because the power is shifted elsewhere. It still continues to increase her damage output, so that's just fine. When Shyvana ults into her dragon form, she's even harder to kill, harder to kite, and puts out even more damage with the AoE at her disposal. Give her a try while it's still low key and you'll definitely like it, I promise you, unless you're against those insecure top laners. The top lane builds are here on your screen again, so go ahead and check those out. Our first underrated pick in the jungle for patch 10.8 will be Ivern. Ivern is a support style jungler who finds success through the utility that he offers his team, as well as efficient counter juggling with his passive. Rather than harming standard jungle camps, Ivern channels a ring around them that lets him collect their gold and XP peacefully after a day. I said peacefully with quotation marks because I still don't trust Ivern. Have you seen that guy? He's so freaking creepy. Anyway, if Ivern has to smite up, he can just smite the camp as soon as the circle starts channeling in order to save time. His Q is a long-range route that lets himself and allies pull themselves to whoever he lands it on. His W lets him spread out his own brushes to obscure vision, and his E is a shield that explodes after delay, slowing anyone hit by the explosion. Ivern's ultimate, Daisy, summons a large golem that knocks up enemies in her line of attack. She's useful for absorbing aggro and running people down, especially when paired with Ivern's E-slow. Pick Ivern when your team needs a little more utility for protecting carries. People have no idea how useful he is, and the constant shields is extremely powerful. Nunu is our second underrated jungler for patch 10.8, boasting some of the best objective control in the game through his Q consume and smite combo. He's remarkably tanky, so that's another reason to pick him up. Even though his main selling point is objective control and easy counter jungling with his Q's consume, Nunu can quite literally snowball lanes with his W and his E's multi-person root. Follow up that CC with a giant channel slow field and an explosive burst of damage, and Nunu is pretty promising, especially if you're using his Q to heal to tower dive. People never really give Nunu a ton of attention because he's simple, but that's just what makes him such an excellent jungle pick. And here are those builds for you guys one more time. Neeko will be our first underrated pick for the mid laners of patch 10.8. She's found a great niche for herself as a pick champion, taking Glacial Augment and building GLP and Twin Shadows, as she is extremely fun to play but horrible to go against. Once those active items hit, the target is slowed for a ridiculous amount of time, and Neeko is free to follow up on it with or without her allies, unless she uses her W's clone to pose as her jungler, giving the impression that she's finally getting ganked, which never happens in solo queue, by the way. Thanks to the huge amount of damage that she gets from her Q alone, it almost doesn't even matter that she isn't building raw AP, and with the follow-up CC with her E's root, the kills come so easy. Even easier though are her team fights, where she can get an enormous ult that both stuns and damages enemies. This build makes Neeko almost easier than my ex, and her kit isn't quite as flashy as most of the new champions, but she definitely gets the job done for anyone taking a more utility-focused approach to the game. Our second underrated mid laner is Vel'Koz. Tanks are back in the meta, and this means that Vel'Koz's passive's true damage is one of the best suited picks in piercing their defenses and shredding the enemy frontline. In lane, Vel'Koz has access to a strong harass with his Q's missile, where you can finally utilize geometry that you learned in high school. and being able to split it at a 180 degrees angle makes him attack in very creative ways. Vel'Koz's W is a decent ability for clearing waves, but it's also a nice follow-up after landing his ease knockup to easily proc the true damage burst. Vel'Koz's ult is the most iconic ability. The laser beam, with the right positioning, allows Vel'Koz to blast an entire team into nothingness, which really lives up to the name Disintegration Ray. In addition to being a good answer to tanky front lines, Vel'Koz's range makes him an efficient pick for sieging up objectives, which is one of the most important things a champion can do in this meta. Learning to hit Vel'Koz's Q from weird angles has a small learning curve, but outside of that, he's pretty accessible champion that performs surprisingly well. The builds for the mid lane should be up on your screen right now. Underrated bot laner number 1 is Veigar. Veigar is a hard scaling mage that gains more AP the more enemy he hits with the spells, or you can just use his Q skill shot to last hit the targets and gain AP that way. His early game isn't the strongest, but that's actually why playing him bot isn't such a bad idea. You get a support to hold your hand through the weakest stage of the game. I wish I had a support to hold my hand. Anyway, even though early game isn't Veigar's strong suit, the large stun zone offered by his E helps him stay relatively safe as long as his reaction time is good enough, and his W is an AoE strike that does a huge chunk of damage. Veigar's ult does a huge burst damage up front and can also nuke his target as well as execute them. Veigar is an exceptionally great choice for autofill mid laners who just don't really understand AD carry play, and he can be flexed into support as well, so there's a lot of value to be had. And if your E stun isn't enough, your slow from your items and glacial should do the trick. Sivir is our second underrated bot laner on patch 10.8. Sivir is one of the more utility-focused AD carries in League, prized for her safe laning phase and wave clear. Even though she isn't considered a traditional hyper carry though, the reason Sivir is so underrated is because she does scale well into the late game, and most of the current meta's ADCs can't stop her from doing that. In lane, Sivir can just mindlessly clear waves with the Q's boomerang mechanic and a few ricocheted auto attacks. Her W's, ricocheted auto attacks, are actually the secret to Sivir's late game success as they can crit their way through a team fight. People don't pay attention to it, and before they know, they've just taken enough bounce crits to go straight into the gray screen. The other main draw of Sivir though is her spell shield, which keeps her safe against hard engaged comps. Her ult is one of the more useful teamfighting abilities in the game, offering high increased movement speed to all nearby allies and offering Sivir a large boost in attack speed while her ricochet is active. Just like Nico, Sivir isn't the flashiest thing in the game, but she can do a great job and no one will ever expect her to pop off. Before we go ahead and go into the support picks, here's one last look at those bot lane builds. Taric will be our first underrated support pick of 10.8, and while it's rare to see him not involved in the infamous Taric Yeet booster strat, it's nice to have him back in the bot lane. And if you ever use that strategy, I have zero respect for you. Anyway, with tanks back in the saddle, teamfights are lasting a little bit longer than the bursty, fast, and loose teamfights that happen when assassins and bruisers are the standard. With this increase in time comes an innate buff to Taric players. It's easier to time their ultimates. Taric has a weird kit, and his W's Bastion mechanic allows him to cast spells on both himself and his ally, and learning to land his stun from a cast point of an ally is tricky. But the hardest part of Taric has always been timing his ult. Because there's such a long delay between the cast and the effect taking place, a lot of time Taric's allies would just die before the visibility even hits. Or if the enemy would just see Taric ulting and disengage the fight completely. With these longer teamfights though, everyone gets too locked into the combat to disengage easily, and Taric is more free to save his allies and rapid proc his passive Q for more healing. Like I said, it's been a while since Taric was in the spotlight, so it'll take a little time for people to rediscover his power, but this man is both dazzling and quite literally stunning. And if you disagree with me, you are wrong. Zyra is our final underrated pick of 10.8, and her damage from the support role is just so freaking obnoxious. Not only does the raw damage output overshadow most of her team, the lane poke from her Q and W plant is so hard to dodge. And if her enemies are unlucky enough to get caught in her E's route, then they have no choice but to eat the damage. Since Zyra's ult increases the attack speed of her plants and knocks enemies up, it becomes a terrifying force in team fights. It acts as a zone control to deter enemies from getting near her Guardian of Death. Mage supports haven't been the meta for quite a while, but Zyra is definitely ready to get back into the mainstream support pool. Stop trying to bring her into the jungle, Riot, please. The only person that could jungle Zyra is my friend Maggie, and she's the best. So if you're not Maggie, don't play her in the jungle. Play her in the bot lane. She has CC, she's an insane lane bully, and her teamfights are devastating in the right hands. She's primed and ready for success. And finally, there are the support builds for you to take one last peek at. Thanks again for watching guys, and we really hope that you enjoyed this video along with the rest of our patch 10.8 series. Once again, let us know in the comments what you guys think the most underrated skin is so we can hit you with that hot, fresh heart react, as we really do love hearing from you. I'm sorry that I haven't been doing on-camera stuff recently for the intro and outro, as I tried cutting my own hair recently and I goofed so hard. So you guys don't get to see that. I'm sorry. So see you guys next time. Good luck on the Rift. Keep healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the comment section down below, as well as on my Instagram at Nathan_ing. Have a good one.